Cho sampo pa gyu trashi pa tu che tempe trile yar ngonda pelge drolora zampe ze parache pande lame shabla solwade Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Badra Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Sumati Uta Vardanya Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Uta Vardanya Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munishas Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Badra Varsa Manya Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sanek Uta Vardanya Shri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dhagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sungi Nawa Tsedo So Tseji Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshune Ila Sambe Dede Malupa Geme Lungi Drupra Chingelo Soni Sodan Diktun Shakpe Tse Dungi Namke Yinsu Lekshune Lapchen Tsoni Yonsu Tsopa Dan Chirani Dun Changra Chingelo Chancho Pargi Ninsen Tukun Tu Nyu Peme Siudru Lekshune Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshi Shi Tungen De La Drupra Chingelo Dagi Lona Chola Chokpa Dan Chemin Samjur Ngemba Shiwa Dan Chodan Tumbe Dede Malupa Beme Lungi Drupra Dorna Tingne Tsira Tamche Dan Teche Pardo Nekaba Tamche Tu Rese Kemne Lama Kele Me Tukche Chingi Dala Siksu Sol Gongyab Drewe Nyamda Dachala Chetsun Lame Tuche Rab Gongne Kudan Sungi Nawa Dralme Tu Nyamsu Nyongwe Kesan Tobrasho Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dan Rame Chiki Pela Longche Ching Sadan Lamgi Yente Rabzone Dorje Changi Kopa Nyurtob Shoya Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Yin Yerme Chikto Chingi Alo Makyuke Kudan Lo Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Yerme Chikto Chingi Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Svo Om Muni Muni Hamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Sashipuki Choshimeto Tramare Ravalingashi Nidegempadi Sange Shintu Mikte Ulwarki Drokunam Dashingla Chopar Shoyidamang Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Shua Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupar Shua Sangye Chodan Soge Chonam Lan Chancho Pardo Dani Kyaps Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupar Shua
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo Haike Dan Ludan Jinke Rudanda Mikinum Dan Ruakunge Tranam Chitsampa Tamcheketo Dagi Chetento Tamcheketo Dagi Chetento. Buongiorno.
Good morning. Yesterday, we explained in the beginning how much the environment, body and mind are connected as a manifestation of the same, how much our self, our being, is conditioned by every object that we interact with, like our physical state, that it influences the mind influences the body, the environment, and so on. This makes me come to my mind that some time ago I saw a documentary called
Dishonesty, the Truth About Lies.
Dishonesty, the Truth About Lies.
È un documentario molto interessante che
It's a very interesting documentary that talks about human conduct and behavioral. And at the conclusion of the documentary, there is this researcher
in un auditorio pienissimo di gente
in an auditorium in some university, and he asks, he says, I did same research on the human behavior in 70 places around the world. What do you think? Do you think that based on the place and the culture, there is somewhere where there is more tendency to lie or to follow the rules? Or is it all the same? For instance, is there a difference between Finland and Pakistan or other countries? And there were people from different countries saying, yes, here, of course, we follow more the rules and there less. And he says, actually, the result of the experiment is that in every place, the result was the same. It doesn't matter if we are in a country or another. When people are under the same conditions, they react in the same way. And this makes us reflect on something. Also, one of the first prerequisite that we have, even before Lama Tsongkhapa in ancient texts, from a text of Asanga, attributed to Buddha Maitreya, the first condition to create the correct place for the practice, having correct conditions. We are much more conditioned and influenced by the context in which we are than what we can actually imagine or we are aware of. The classical example is that if there is a place that is clean, it's more difficult to throw away some, to litter. But if the place is dirty, the tendency of littering is higher. This is the classical example, but we have many others. So what happens is, it's true, we do have to direct correctly our mind, etc. But we have to keep in mind the importance of the conditions that is around us, the environment, the context in which we are. It's not, it doesn't determine, but it's important. We don't have to separate the things. The mind is not important, we just need to create external conditions. This doesn't work. But we can also not say that just the mind, depending on what I think, doesn't matter what is around me. Maybe to those who reached a certain level of stability, this is true. Someone that has this deep habit of not being overwhelmed by external conditions. But for us, we are highly conditioned and influenced by external conditions. I remember once, many years ago, by chance I was in São Paulo in the day where a law was applied that was called Clean City. And it was a law where they prohibited big publicities outdoor, and before the city was overwhelmed by it. And I remember the evening where the publicity signs were all over the place and the day after completely empty. And the sensation I had was that there was more space. I remember this feeling I had distinctively from the day before to the day after, with and without the publicity signs. I think you already heard about subliminal signs. This study was done many years ago where they showed, for example, that if we take a video footage and we put a phrase, an image, in in one picture, in one panel, and in the others is not there. And so for these reasons, we are not able to actually catch it. Because what they saw is that when we put a certain message, a message that you're not even able to see, but it's actually there, because it passes so quickly, in the end, you actually received this message. And if I ask you a question, you will answer based on what was transmitted with this subliminal message. So this was prohibited in publicity. I remember that doing research on some movies, there were some subliminal messages, for instance, in the movie, what was it called?
Era un film di cartone animato.
It was Roger Rabbit, if I remember correctly. But anyways, it said also that Kubrick used this technique in some cases, but the point is, if we see something for a fraction of a second that passes so quickly that we're not even able to be aware that we actually saw it, and this still has an influence on us, imagine with what we have in front of us constantly. Do they have an influence on us? Of course, yes. So,
noi consumiamo non solo mangiando, ma noi andiamo a assorbire anche.
We absorb, we consume, not only what we eat, but also what we see, what we hear, etc. I was talking with a friend, a doctor, some time ago, that was working in the CERT, so... And I asked her, what is the definition of a drug? Could it be that drug is something that enters into contact with our senses, it changes the chemical composition of the body and creates the addiction? Could this be a definition? And she said, yes. When we take our phone in our hands and we start doing some scrolling or whatever, is there a reaction, a chemical reaction in the body? Yes. The dopamine rises, etc. Does it create addiction? Yes. So, is it or is it not a drug? It's not that the drug needs to be something that I have to put in my mouth or in my vein or smoke. Also through our sight, our hearing. What I eat or what I put in my vein is more on a gross level, let's say. But what we have in front of us, like the phone, from my perspective, is a drug. And I say this because I think that we lack of awareness of the impact that these interactions that we have actually have in our daily life. So, if I want to have a calm mind, present, I have to try and avoid external conditions that take to an opposite direction. The majority of us, the main difficulty we have is not that we are too tired with a lot of tiredness or too slow. Our problem, what is it? We are too fast, too activated. We are too activated constantly. And this is what we see, that what happens with kids as well. We say that kids are too activated, and then what do? We give them a lot of sugar. And sugar, does it calm you down or does it activate you? It activates. Then we stimulate them with a lot of images and things like this that activate as well. We fill them up with a lot of activities. And when there is no activity, it's like, what do I do?
Okay.
And if we see with ourselves, with the adults, we complain that we are too agitated, we have a lot of anxiousness, too activated. And then what do? We drink a lot of coffee, and coffee calms down, notoriously. Because if I say, okay, I'm activated, I'm too activated, what do? I drink coffee. Okay. We're constantly with screens in front of us. Being there, we have to do many things. We dress, usually, closing our abdomen. That forces us to have a higher breath through our chest that activates many thoughts. There was a teacher, very important, that said, I think the majority of problems we have of anxiety are caused by how we dressed, our dresses. Because there's this culture of, in order to appear better looking, we put something that actually tightens the belly. And if we have something that squeezes our belly, our abdomen, where will we breathe from? From our chest. And this activates our mind, while the abdomen breathing calms the mind. So if I always breathe from the upper part of my body, my mind will become faster. So when we look at ourselves and we say, okay, I'm too activated, I need to calm down, it's not enough to try to meditate, because if we try to meditate and we start doing the exercises like we did this morning or yesterday, just simply sitting down and breathing and trying to be present, it's beautiful. But if I try to do this, I can also do other steps of meditation, but if I try to do this while I keep a lifestyle that goes in the opposite direction, it becomes very difficult. And Lama Tsongkhapa, let me see if I can find the phrase, Lama Tsongkhapa's phrase.
Ce l'avevo di qua. Comunque, Lama Tsongkhapa dice:
Anyways, Lama Tsongkhapa said, the only way we have in order to develop a concentration state, meditational concentration state, developing a mind, being able to stay still on an object, is creating the favorable conditions. If we do not create favorable conditions, you can try for a long time, but you will not be able to do that. And we're talking about the 14th century in Tibet. So it's not something that it's about just modern times. So it's important for us to ask ourselves, do I want to be more activated or more calm and present? It's simple. If I want to be more activated, I need to do the things that activate me. If I want to do things that calm me down, I need to do things that calm me down, and possibly stop doing things that activate me too much. And when I need to be activated, I do it, but we don't need them both. We have some moments where we need this energy of being more activated, but there are many other moments where it's actually the opposite. So one of the things, the important things for us in general in life, that goes together with the process of meditation, is diminishing the stimuli that are not necessary, reducing them. And it's difficult because we have an addiction with this stimuli. I don't know if it happened ever to you to wake up and just take your phone in your hands as the first thing. Some may say, but I'm putting the alarm. But the technology of old alarms still exists. Because the point is, one wakes up and the first thing is taking the phone and starts already seeing at things. Some time ago, I was in the car, I was listening to the radio. I don't even remember which program, but at a certain point they were talking about the phone, and the presenter said, you see, we arrived at a point where one has difficulty of staying with oneself. You go to the restroom because you need, you go there, you arrive, you put down your trousers, and you remember, I left the phone in another room. What do? Get up, go out of the room, get the phone, because we have this fear of staying alone with ourselves.
È molto preoccupante.
It's kind of worrying.
Qua stiamo parlando già di una cosa un po' all'estremo.
We're already talking about something that is extreme, but we have this addiction. So when we sit down and we are there trying to be a bit with ourselves, it's obvious that we go into abstinence. So we need to work on these two sides. There is meditation, wonderful, beautiful, preliminary practices. Now we will also explain other parts of this. But there's also the part of creating favorable conditions, and amongst these, diminishing the information that is not necessary, reducing the stimuli that are not necessary. The same thing is about the quantity of sugar that we ingest, or stimuli that we get, for instance, coffee. I'm not saying you cannot drink coffee, but one thing that I invite you to do some research on the effects of coffee in the body and mind. What does it happen when I drink coffee? I don't know if you ever asked this to yourselves. Yes, no, maybe, more or less. But you drank coffee already. Okay, so ask yourself this question. I don't drink coffee because I never liked it. It always disgusted me. But once I studied a bit what happens, and it's very different. It's something that I didn't really expect to see what actually happens in effect. But anyways, I don't want to enter into these details. I invite you to do some research. Information nowadays is very available, so you can try and see what happens inside of us, because the point is, if I need to stay more with myself, be more calm, because the more I'm agitated, the more I'm stimulated, the more I will stay at a superficial level on perception of things. It's difficult to read something that is deeper. It's more difficult to reflect on something and seeing what is between the lines and going deeper into things. And here, there is a process that is constant stimuli create this peaks of dopamine that creates a fall. So every time that we experiment dopamine, right after, there is this fall. It's enough just to remind ourselves the moment that we eat something that is so good and we have any kind of sensorial pleasure and we obtain something that we want, there's a moment of pleasure. This sensation of pleasure doesn't stay long. There's the pleasure, and at a certain point the pleasure stops, and there's this emptiness, this feeling of emptiness that comes, and there's this feeling of wanting to repeat this sensation of pleasure that we had. So what happens is, when dopamine arises, it generates this emptiness, and this generates an acceleration inside of us, because we want to try to arrive to this same state of pleasure as before, and this creates a level of unsatisfaction. And unsatisfaction is not the simple, this is not good, it's not enough. It's something that is deeper. Usually, one wants the object of desire just to fill up this inner sensation of unsatisfaction, not because the object is necessary. I don't know if this is clear. So, This lifestyle, this way of living based on dopamine, generates a higher level of unsatisfaction, and this creates this agitation that doesn't allow us to have concentration because our mind is not able to stay on one thing. Because I need to find something to get back to the sensation that I had before and get out of the sensation of unsatisfaction. And without concentration, we cannot go deeper, and doesn't allow us to have mental clarity, discernment, and not having creativity or being able to listen to our intuition. So what happens is this enormous quantity of stimuli that we have, increasing the levels of dopamine, increase a higher level of unsatisfaction that doesn't allow us to have concentration. We have less ability of being present in what we do, and as a consequence, it's difficult for us to develop three characteristics that are fundamental to us. To have a correct discernment, because how am I able to say this is this and that is that when I stay in the surface and I'm not able to go deeper? I am much more inclined to be manipulated. We see this today in an incredible way. Sometimes I see people believing in things and I said, okay, but how do you believe this? And they say, because they said this. And I'm like, but did you ponder on it? An example of this, without referring to anybody, is the theory of the earth being flat. When someone said to me, I know because the earth is flat. And I said, but did you think about this? And as soon as you start thinking on it and reflect, but anyways, this is not the object of discussion right now. What happens is we become more easily manipulated because we don't go in depth into things, we don't have the space, we have difficulty in discernment. Then the other consequence is having less creativity because we have less inner space. We're always looking for something and we're not able to go in deep and create this space where ideas are born. Creativity happens, one has to transcend boredom in order to create. Creativity doesn't come staying there doing something. When we see great creatives of the world or scientists, usually the best ideas did not come from the laboratory while looking at documents. They came walking around while an apple fell from a tree, or one thing's come to my mind, Steve Jobs. In his biography, it's written that when he had to take some moments to understand things, he just went out and have a walk. He would not stay in the office. So creativity is something that is born when there is space and there is depth. And then there is our intuition, which is one of our best qualities. And when we don't have this inner silence, there's not space in order to listen to our intuition. So if we stay in this addictions and enormous quantity of stimuli, the consequences are not positive. So it's clear that meditation and preliminary exercises help us to calm our mind and have more depth. But we also have to help it. So let's see what are these conditions that Lama Tsongkhapa explained us and that come even from more ancient texts. The first is to stay in a place that is adequate.
ne sampo, sa sampo, trok sampo, yoce sampo. Quindi essere in un luogo adatto.
So to be in an adequate place means have the minimum necessary for our survival, so minimum of comfort that is ensured, because if I'm in a context where I need to preoccupy myself for my sustainment, where's my attention? Is there. And here, what we said yesterday, there's also another important aspect for us. Trying to organize our life, even when we have our survival that is ensured, the more we are able to organize life so that we don't have to decide things every moment, and things are flowing in a way that where we don't have to think too much, less inner space those things will occupy. So here it means from on one side having a simple life where I am sure about my needs that are organized in order for them to be covered, but I'm not staying there thinking too much and giving too much importance to these things. This is the first condition. The second condition is trying to be in a healthy context, in the sense of if I find myself in a context where there are very big conflicts or situations of a lot of violence, hostility, etc., it's much more difficult to develop a state of inner calmness and balance in this context. It's not impossible, but it's much more difficult. It's important to be in a place that is healthy. So not being in a place that is too humid or too hot or any other things that can generate some sickness. For instance, here in the temple, before doing this reconstruction, I remember that every time we had moments like these, there were a lot of people falling asleep. And when the rebuilding finished, this didn't happen anymore. Why? Because now we have a system of changing the air, so we did not have a lot of oxygen here before. So now, if you see these holes here, from here the air comes out, then we have near the door the sensors of CO2 that see how much the level of carbon dioxide in the room, and based on this it regulates how much air needs to flow in the room in order to change it. I remember that the system, the air system of the the temple cost a lot. And I remember saying, now finally, now this is the use that we have for this, so that people will not fall asleep anymore. In the sense that if I stay in a place where the oxygen is lacking, of course not at the point where you feel sick, but that doesn't make you have more clarity or makes you have more tiredness, it's more difficult. So the point is looking for a place that is healthy in this sense. Having good acquaintances, so people around us, as we said yesterday, doesn't necessarily mean that are funny people. It means people that through the interaction with them influence us positively for our path. Because sometimes we have people that are funny, gentle, kind, and nice, but have ideas that are completely different from ours, that maybe are looking for something else or influence us in the opposite direction from where we want to go. It's not that they're bad people, but if I want to develop concentration, meditation, doing this with some intensity, it's important that I have around myself also people that respect this that I'm doing and in somehow go in the same direction. And this opens another topic, that is the people with whom we interact in our lives have a lot of importance and influence on us. So There are some people that we can choose and other that we cannot. But we can choose the way in which we relate and how much staying close to these people. And it's important. The point is not that if it's funny, not funny, pleasurable or not. The point is the interaction with this person helps me to become a better person or no. Okay. Then, of course, we don't have to blame the other because it's how we put ourselves in front of the other. But anyways, we are still influenced. So we have to find this balance. The other aspect is called are the good conditions. It's a place that is calm during the day and silent during the night. So we mean this if we want to calm our mind and want to meditate better. One of the conditions that Lama Tsongkhapa brings to us is in order to meditate, looking for a place where during the day there is not a lot of people, not a lot of movement, and during the night where there is silence. So these are the good conditions. So the first is being in an adequate place. And here I invite you in your home to organize a bit your things. For instance, Lama Michel Rinpoche always had sacred images everywhere, and we can see it here also in the temple. Lama Michel Rinpoche came to me once. He just came back from a travel, and he was gifted with some paintings with a sticker in the back to attach them to the walls, and he always looked at the symbolism, not as the aesthetic. And he came to me and he said, Lama, you make these automatic tankas in the temple. And he came with this printed paintings in a material that was terrible. And I said, okay, but please allow me to do it my way. And there was Jacopo that showed me this technique of tattoo wall, transferring the image on the wall that then stays. And it took us 2 months at least. One of the most beautiful and intense moments of my life. I remember I did a retreat of Photoshop in that time. Without exaggerating, I was sleeping one night yes and the other no. And when I slept like 3 hours, and 18 hours I spent in front of the computer with Photoshop. I remember it was summer, we had this deadline, and there was this person from Brazil. I remember she was preparing the breakfast in the morning, bringing me some chamomile to put on my eyes. But the point is that when we do something that is monothematic, so you only do that, then at a certain point you enter in a flow, at least this is my experience, in which it's not that I was tired or I was not feeling well. I was joyous. I was feeling very well. So we can do it, but we request some conditions. But this to say that Lama Michel Rinpoche has this idea, when you see something, what you see reverberates and reflects something that we have inside. Everywhere. If I see an image that awakens in me a sense of anger, it's better not to have this image everywhere. If there is an image that connects me with sadness, maybe sometimes it's okay to not forget and to confront this sadness, but it's not something I want to see every day in every moment. So sacred images are useful because they have a meaning that is deep and also reverberates inside of us the qualities and the aspects that we want to develop in our spiritual path. So for this reason, it's important to have them kind of everywhere. Not all temples are like this, of course. Not all masters have this way. Some really care about the aesthetics. But Lama Michel Rinpoche was more about the meaning. So we have them everywhere except for the toilet. So this is exactly for this reason. When I see something, this reflects something that I have inside. So inside your homes, how we keep our house, how we organize the spaces, the images that we see, etc., have an influence on us. So it's important trying to organize and taking care of the external spaces based on the inner sensation that we want to develop, not based just on what is nice or not nice. What I see has an impact on me. Okay? The second condition, and here we enter in more complicated aspects, more difficult aspects. The second condition, in order to practice well, is low desire, and the third is contentedness.
Non stare lì a desiderare.
So the first is not desiring what one does not have. The more I want something I don't have, and I stay there thinking, I should have this, I would like to have that, etc. This is one of the main forces that keeps our mind agitated. We talked earlier, when we have the peak of dopamine, then we have the fall that generates unsatisfaction. And this is the basis of desire, the sensation where I need something else. I need to get back to that experience, and I project it outside of myself. So what happens is, if we don't diminish our desire, reduce our desire, cultivating satisfaction and giving value to what we have, understanding that having more doesn't take me to a higher state of happiness and well-being. So just looking at what we have, saying, what I have is enough. I don't need anything else. The more we are able to be happy with what we have, more our mind will become calm. And here there is a huge job to do. For instance, there is an exercise that refers to the first step of preparation for death, and we will all have to prepare for this because it's something that we will all arrive to. So it's not that we have to wait for Mr. Death to arrive and give us the diagnosis that we will die. So the point is, the first thing we need to do is relate with material things in a healthy way. So to understand that material things are a means and not an end. It's an interesting and funny exercise. For instance, you go home, you open a wardrobe, doesn't matter what, you look at the objects you have, or the dresses, and you ask to the object, are you at my service or am I at yours? What function do you have for me? If we see that this object has a function for us, then okay, thank you, object, you stay there. If we see that we take something and we see that this object doesn't have a function, because this dress, I'm not putting it for years, or this object, I never use it, and doesn't really have a function if not being possessed by me, then the possibilities are either I give it as a gift, or I sell it, or I throw it away, or I give it a meaning, a function. But there's no other possibility. I don't put the possibility of keeping it there without a function. And we will see that also these objects that we accumulated that don't have a meaning for us, in some way, they block something of our lives. There's part of our lives that stays there, and getting free from these things, saying, okay, I am not what I possess, and I allow myself to become more light. That doesn't mean giving away everything, but what I don't use, what I don't need, I give it a function. I gift it to someone, I sell it, or I find a meaning and a function to it. It's not so difficult. And when we are able to do this, this brings us a lot more joy. So with this, slowly, we start relating with material objects as a means and not as an end in itself. And the question is not, for instance, I like this object. It's a tablet that we need, that its use is just to read and write. But there's an issue here. There's the new model that just came out. The new model have colors, and this is black and white.
No? È un problema grave,
It's a big problem. So what happens here? This object, to me, does it sustain the functions that I need? Yes. Is it useful to read what I need to read and write what I need to write? Does it work well? Yes. So I do not need anything else. I don't want the new model. Even if someone comes and say, I will gift it to you, I don't want it. But it's better, but I'm happy with this. Why? Because the object has a function for me. It's not about possessing the object. It's about satisfying a need that I have in this moment. I need to read and write, and this allows me to do exactly this, and it works well. Great. So to conclude this part, there's this story of Genlapaga with the socks that I think exemplifies well the situation. I went to my master in India and I gifted him with 2 pairs of socks. He looks at me and says, what should I do with these? And I said, Genla, feet, socks, there is a relation there. And he says, yes, but I already have 2 pairs of socks. 1 pair I use and the other that I change when the first are dirty. And I tried to convince him, saying, look, the material of your socks is synthetic, and I brought really high quality socks and this and that. I talked about the Italian socks and this and that, and then he said, okay, thank you. Some days after, I saw some other monks with this pair of socks that I gifted my master. But his point was not that those socks were not good enough, but that he was satisfied with what he already had. And his point was, if I need 2 pairs of socks, and in the end I possess 3, then I will need 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. Because when I go beyond the level of the need and I enter in the level of the I want, then this is limitless. He said, I'm okay with 2 pairs of socks. I clean one, I use the other. And he also showed me, he showed me, oh, look, this is the pair of socks that I just cleaned, and these are the ones that I'm using. So when 1 pair gets dirty, then I clean, I use the other, and that's it. And he always had his socks. And in India, it's always warm. But here we can say, okay, here it's different. So we can have 2 for winter, 2 for the summer, 2 for the middle seasons. And then we look also at the colors, but it becomes more complicated. So the point is, we have to ask ourselves, do I want it or do I need it? If it's a need, then it can be satisfied. If it's a want, a desire, one needs to ask themselves, really or no? I don't necessarily have to do it just because I want to. So the lesser we are slaves of the I want, the freer we are, more inner space we have. So one of the conditions that Lama Tsongkhapa brings is having low desire, which doesn't mean living in poverty. Having low desire and having contentment is giving value to what there is, giving priority to my needs and not to my wishes, desires. And this is a matter of habit. Unfortunately, I see, since we're young, this thing of the kid goes there and maybe hurt himself or is sad or fought with someone, and what you do with kids usually? We give them a gift. It's like saying, okay, you're sad, there's something that is not going well, I give you something material so that you will be happy. What do we teach them? That when someone is not happy, we need to obtain something, and then it becomes buying shoes or going on the internet and buying something. I don't know if it ever happened to you to buy something that you actually didn't need. Just to fill up an emptiness that we feel inside. This need of buying something. So this, we need to slowly reduce it. So from one side, less desire, and desire are about the future, what I want to have. So being a bit more in peace with the future, not staying there saying, I want this, I want that, how it would be wonderful if I had this or that, without having to live a life of sacrifices where I cannot have what I need. No. But not staying there every moment trying to imagine the future that I want this and that, and having more satisfaction and contentment that is about the present. So the desire is about what I want to have, so less desire and more contentment, so it means being more satisfied with what I have. Satisfaction is obtained giving value to what we have, not obtaining what we don't. And someone may ask, okay, but what does has to do with meditation? In meditation, there are two main enemies: mental tiredness and mental agitation. And in our case, the principal one, at least at the beginning, is mental agitation. And mental agitation derives from this desire and unsatisfaction. This is where it is born. So creating external favorable conditions, having lesser desire, having more contentment. Here it's a bit more difficult, letting go, abandoning the various activities, so not doing what is not necessary. And here, for instance, in the monastery context, Lama Tsongkhapa said, stop doing astrology, studying artistic things, if not necessary in that moment, because those are things that one starts to do and they are beautiful things. But if my objective in that moment is to meditate and keep my mind still, and I'm not able to do this, the more are the things that I do, the more the mind has places where to go. So in general, there's also this reducing activities, reducing what is not necessary, especially those activities that are superficial. One disciple of one of my masters, he arrived from Tibet. He became a monk. He went to my master and he said, look, my objective in life, I want to do a life of meditation and retreat. I just want to go there and spend my life meditating in solitude. And my master said, okay, but first you have to study Dharma. You have to have the basis on which you will meditate. And he will say, okay, what do I need to do? And he said, okay, you need to study at least the paramitas and correct view of reality, which is almost 15 years of study. And he said, okay. He went there, he studied very well all those years, and when he finished, he went to my master and said, okay, master, I finished. I would like to go and meditate. And he said, okay. He gave them all the instructions on how to do the meditations, explaining all the steps on how to doing the retreat, finding also a family with a house that was very far away from everything else, and the family would help them with food during the retreat so that he wouldn't have to think of this. And then he goes for the retreat. And theoretically, it was a retreat without an ending. So lifetime retreat. After 3 weeks or a month, he comes back, goes to my master and says, and my master told me this, right? So he said, look, I'm ashamed. And he said, why? What's happening? You're not doing the sessions of the retreat. And he said, look, yes, I am there. This family is extremely kind with me. The place is wonderful. They take good care of me and everything. But I'm ashamed in front of them because they are there doing everything for me as if I'm doing I don't know what. And I'm sitting there to meditate, following all the instructions and everything. But when I sit there to meditate, and I'm breathing, when the moment arrives, then the songs of Bollywood come into my mind. And all the songs with the dances and everything comes to my mind. Because what happened during those 15 years of studies that he did, sometimes he would go to the movies. And when you do something that is prohibited, it stays even stronger inside of us, because in the monasteries in south of India, going to the movies is prohibited. So sometimes he would go and watch these Indian movies with all these dances and songs of Bollywood. And during these years, of course, there's nothing negative or wrong in this. But the point is that he was sitting there, and what came to his mind? Those songs. And he said, on what am I meditating in the end? On Bollywood songs. I'm familiarizing with these, even if I don't want to. It's an inner fight. So my master gave other instructions on how to overcome this, and then he never came back. So what happened in the end, only he will know. I hope that he was able to overcome this. So when we're talking about having less activity, it means if I see a lot of stories or read many things or do many activities, all these things take a space inside of us, especially during a period in which we want to develop more mental calmness and more concentration. Is important to reduce the stimuli that are unnecessary. Not with this attitude of, I cannot watch a movie because it's negative. No, there's nothing negative in watching a movie or talking with someone or talking about politics. But if I am passionate about politics and I start talking about this, and in the morning I read all the news about this and I start discussing with people, and then I sit down to meditate, where will the mind go? It will go there. So I know a person, for instance, that for their job, when this person wants to have some ideas, they sit down meditating, and when the idea comes, they write it down. Because it's like when you try not to think about something, that thing arises. This is not the correct use of meditation. But what happens is, when we have certain stimuli and we try to empty the mind, this comes. So my personal experience is, when I did my first long retreat, I was alone in Nepal. And after the second or third week, where I was spending a whole day with the sessions of meditation, and amongst the sessions I was reading the texts of Paponka Rinpoche, of the Lamrim, at a certain point I saw that in the beginning, the things that came to my mind were the things that just happened in the previous days, and slowly they became less strong. And then after a while, to my mind arose memories of the past that I didn't even remember having those memories anymore. And we need a lot of time in order to let our mind rest and calm down. Also in Buddha's teachings, if we take a container of glass and we fill it up with water and sand and we move it, the water becomes
turva, no? Non si vede bene.
full of sand.
Quando si smette di muovere, dopo di un
When we stop moving,
la sabbia scende.
after a while, the sand starts going down and the water becomes clear again. And our mind is similar to this. When we have many thoughts and movements, and we move the mind and we lose clarity. When we are able to calm it down, slowly, slowly it becomes more clear. And one has more clarity on oneself, on the others. We have more concentration, better communication, better ability of listening, of deciding, the intuition, more creativity. But this requires our mind to be clear. So when it says here, reducing the quantity of activities that are unnecessary, it's exactly for this reason, to not have the mind occupied with other things. Then we have the fifth condition, having a pure ethics, that is having a conduct, a physical and verbal conduct that is healthy. So not killing, not lying, robbing, not having substances that take away the clarity of our mind, for example, drugs or alcohol, having a correct conduct, sexual conduct. The basis is the 5 precepts are giving value to life, so not killing, giving value to the truth, so not lying, giving value to the relationship between us, so not robbing, giving value to intimate relationships and the respect that we have of ourselves and our intimacy, so not having incorrect sexual conduct, and giving value to mental clarity, so not using those substances that take it away from us. So this is the basis. Then on these we can have many other commitments. For instance, in the Lojong we have the 18 commitments and the 21 advices, and we have 2 among these that are very useful. They are simple but not easy. The first is, don't talk about the missing qualities of others. So in other words, don't criticize. And the second is, mind your own business, which is, don't think about others people's business. Don't occupy your mind with what did the other do, why did he do, why this or that. It's not your business. Then when it's about helping others, then you think about the other, but otherwise you don't think about the life of someone else. So these are 2 commitments that, if kept, it helps to create a lot of inner space. So the point is to have a good morality, a conduct that is coherent and healthy, helps a lot in the meditative process.
All'interno dell'etica pura,
within the pure ethics, we have the 4 auxiliary conditions. So we have 4 conditions that helps us in meditation. The first,
che vuol dire custodire le porte dei sensi. Essere attenti a quello che
being careful to what enters in each of our senses. What I see, what I hear, the smell, the touch, the taste. So guarding our senses. Every sensorial object that I consume has an effect on me. For example, with food. It happened to me some years ago. long story short, after looking for many restaurants, after a very long day walking in the mountains, I arrived in the evening. I was very hungry. All restaurants were full in this small village where I was. And in the end, one finally, the last, okay, there is place. And the food was wonderful, was so good. I eat very well. And here I had this experience that when I finished eating, the mind started to go and say to myself, this was so good. When is the next time that I can come back here? Is it possible to find a similar restaurant near home? So this very strong sensorial feeling generated a sensation where my mind kept grasping to it. So sensorial experiences, when they are very intense, then they create and they occupy us an inner space where we stay there, grasping to it. And if I want to meditate, this doesn't help. So I need to guard my senses from strong stimuli. The next three are I need to be careful to the sensorial objects. I need to eat in a healthy way. So eating what I need and in the correct quantity. I try to eat not too much. It is said that one should divide the stomach into 4 parts. 2/4 food, 1/4 liquid, and 1/4 empty. One should end eating that you still have the possibility of eating, that you still have this sensation that you could still go on eating and not ending the meal completely full. So in Tibetan we say being able to regulate the quantity of food that you need. So eating for the necessity of the body. This doesn't mean that we cannot eat what we like, but we eat firstly what is healthy, what is good for us. Then putting effort in the yoga of sleeping correctly. And this refers to not sleeping during the day and sleeping, dividing the night into 4 parts, not sleeping in the first part and the last part. This means I go to bed a bit after sundown and I wake up a bit before sunrise. This is the way in which from centuries and centuries, this is the advice in order to have more energy, more clarity. And here I open a parenthesis that is for all of us, but I don't know if we are all able to put this into practice, so at least I give you the information. It is described that the best moment in order to meditate, where the mind is the clearest naturally, is the 2 hours before sunrise. So this is both in the Buddhist and Vedic tradition. 2 hours before sunrise is like there is this inner calmness, is an energetic thing that naturally we are able to keep a higher level of concentration and bringing our mind to a deeper level. And it's obvious, in order to meditate well 2 hours before sunrise, I need to have a certain lifestyle with balance. I need to go to bed in a certain way, because if I go to bed with a lot of stimuli where I'm completely exhausted, it will be very difficult to wake up before sunrise with a clear mind. So here there's a balance between what I eat, how I live my life during the day, what time do I go to bed, how I go to bed, how I wake up. And this is sleeping. It's said that going to bed sleeping with a positive thought, one exercise we can do is doing the techniques of breathing techniques while laying down. So breathing in, keeping the air, exhaling and keeping the air. I had this experience this year that last year in September, after many days in the car with air conditioning, blocked my shoulder, my left shoulder, and my whole arm. And I had this problem for a lot of time, and it was very difficult for me to move it. And for many months, I could not sleep because of the pain, and it was very difficult to find a correct position. And at a certain point, I didn't want to get painkillers. Then I discovered Brufen, and it was a huge discovery, and I use it with a lot of moderation. But there were nights where even after taking some things, it was very difficult for me to sleep. And the only thing that worked was breathing in this way. And by breathing in 4 phases, so breathing in with 4, keeping with 8, exhaling with 8, and keeping with 4. In the beginning, there was a part of me that even didn't want to breathe. A rebellious part. But in the moment that I said, okay, now let's do what is good for me, and I was able to breathe in this way, and I was able to inspire with inhale with 4, keeping with 8, exhaling with 8, and keeping with 4, the pain slowly went away, and I was able to sleep. So when one goes to bed, instead of going to bed with external stimuli, needing to see something in the television or listening to something until the last second of exhaustion, I have this sensation that when we were younger, when we were kids, someone told us a story in order to go to bed, and then we use television when we grew up. But it's important for us to say, okay, I need to go to bed. I will go to bed when I'm not exhausted. I go there, I start breathing. Even if it takes a while in order to get to sleep, you're not wasting time. Actually, it's the contrary. So we inhale, we keep the air, we exhale, we keep the air. You do this for a while, and if you see that it's very difficult, then you can take a book, very boring book to read, and this really works well. But trying to calm the mind, not putting more stimuli, and going to bed with the intention of wanting to wake up early in the morning in order to meditate. And then one tries, ideally, what is described in the text is going to bed after sundown and waking up before sunrise. And these 2 hours before sunrise are the best moment of the day in order to meditate, when there is more clarity. The 4th condition that helps for the meditation is the awareness during our daily action, that today is called and is known as mindfulness. What does this mean? I'm eating. I take the water, I'm drinking, I'm feeling the water, I'm feeling the weight of the glass of water in my hand. I taste the water entering my body. I allow myself to be present in the things that I do. And this presence in what we do also reduces the inner dialogue that we have. So I'm showering, I'm feeling the water from my head until my feet. For example, I have this thing where I like to, I don't know if it's just my sensation, but when I shower, I feel the temperature of the water that is different from the head to the feet. There is logic, of course, behind this, but allowing ourselves to be there and actually feel it, or feeling the wind, seeing the sun, watching the sunrise, So being present in what we are doing, the more we are able to apply this, even with simple things. We don't have to do something more in our job or with our family. When in the kitchen, when I'm cooking. I will try to be present with what I'm doing. I'm eating, I will eat. I'm listening to you, I'm listening to you. So trying most of all to have this presence in what we do. That adds up to this vigilance. So presence and vigilance. Vigilance is a part of our mind that is like a spy. It stays there looking at what we're doing. Let's imagine that we say, okay, I'm eating, I need to eat. One part of the mind stays there, vigilant. Okay, I'm thinking of the dinner, but it's lunchtime, so come back. I come back, okay, I'm eating. What did Trump do today? No, come back, I'm eating. I'm eating, and at a certain point, no, because my kid, no, I'm eating. So from one side we have the presence in the present moment, that is this awareness of the present moment, and then we have this vigilance that is a part of our mind that observes what we're doing and puts some limitations. Vigilance, there is a beautiful level that when we create this habit of observing ourselves, at a certain point, we're able to observe the emotions as soon as they're arising, until seeing an emotion when it's not yet arising, but it's starting to arise. Because, for instance, some emotions like anger, jealousy, or whatever, they don't arrive all together. They're kind of giving some alarms that they are arriving, but we're not able to catch these alerts, and the more we have this presence and vigilance, the more we are able to catch this alert before they arrive completely and overwhelm us. So if in our daily life, in the things that we do every day, we're able to use these two aspects, this is something that then in meditation is extremely useful. So in our daily life, we try and start being present in what we do. And this is our ability of keeping our mind there where we choose it to be. So I'm listening to you, I chose to listen to you. I am driving, I'm doing this. And there's something that really obstructs us. And it's not because I have something against the phone. I do, but this is not the point. One of the things that these objects have is that we are doing something and something else enters in the midst of all of this. We're talking about something, and then at a certain point another topic enters. Someone that wants to know something, a message of another thing, an information of something else again. It's like we're having a moment between two people and another person just arrives and comes in the middle. An advice, a very practical advice: take out from your phones all the notifications. This is an act of courage, but we can do it. Taking out the notifications. When it's the moment to read the messages, I go and I read the messages. When it's the moment to read the emails, I read the emails. But if I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you. It's not the moment to read the messages. Then we say to the people that are around us, with whom we have more intimate relationship, okay, if there's an emergency, call me. Don't text me, because the texts I read just when I dedicate that time of texting, not the whole time. Otherwise, what happens is that we have this connection, is like umbilical cord connected to these objects that doesn't allow us to be, because there's always something getting in. I think it already happened to us, to all of us, that we want to do something and then a message arrives, a text arrives, and we forget what we wanted to do. This is a very negative sign. a very bad sign. Not being able to have consistency. It's like saying, okay, I'm in a room, I'm going to another room doing something else. In the meantime, a text arrives, I arrive in the other room and I don't even remember why I got there. I don't know if this already happened to some of you. This is a very bad signal. So I invite you to reduce the interruptions. I'm here, I'm here. Sometimes someone say, Lama, I texted you, and I say, yes, I saw the message, but I didn't read it. Why? Do you have something against me? No, but it was not the moment to read it. When I have the moment with calmness to read it, I will read it. But if there is an emergency, you will find a way to let me know. Otherwise, what happens is we're always in between one thing and another, with very unhealthy consequences. So the condition that Lama Tsongkhapa brings us is having a conduct of awareness and vigilance. So having interruptions goes against this direction. And I'm convinced that if Lama Tsongkhapa, Buddha Shakyamuni lived in a time where phones were available, it would definitely be an object that would be cited here, because has an ability of interrupting us and coming in between that is incredible. And I'm not saying we should all throw away our phones. It would be not such a bad idea, but at least reducing the use that we make of it. You know, like getting out of your homes without the phone sometimes, or arriving at home and putting the phone in a specific place, saying, okay, I will come back to you tomorrow. Having moments where we simply stay without the interruptions. Okay? So, if we are able to control the information that arrive to us, reducing the information that are not useful, if we are able to eat in a healthy way, not too much, and eating what we need, if we are able to sleep in a healthy way, going to bed not too late, not too soon, not exhausted, falling asleep with a positive feeling and thought, for example, while doing breathing exercise in generating positive thoughts, waking up early and starting the day with a moment of reflection and meditation, and during the day trying to be most present, aware of what we're doing and vigilant, so observing what I'm doing and trying to be present in what I'm doing. When I'm able to have a lot of presence in what I'm doing, then the vigilance, we don't need much. But when I'm not able to stay present, this vigilance is more needed. Let's imagine that we're able to put this into practice. Are we able to imagine if we would be more able to concentrate better with all of this? I think so. So these are not conditions that were created now. It's centuries that are there in order to have this concentration. And then, a bit more complex, we have
come posso dire, döba la sopa namdok yon supawa. Namdok sono le proiezioni. Vuol dire diminuire le proiezioni.
So it's like reducing projections based on desire, on anger, which means thinking less of the past or projecting less the future. So reducing inner dialogue, basically. Because this mind that constantly receives the past, but if this happened or if that happened, then this would have been like this, that would have been like that, and maybe tomorrow will happen this, will happen that. So if the mind constantly thinks about the past, the future, judging the present, this state keeps us very busy and creates a lot of anxiety. So being able to not stay there reliving the past or preoccupying too much about the future. There's a moment where we project the future and we go in that direction. And there's a moment where we see the past and we learn from it. But we do it with awareness. We choose in a conscious way to look at the past and project ourselves in the future, but not in a way without control, where we are constantly going from one place to another, and we spend our whole lives not even living life itself in the present moment. So this would be the sixth necessary condition. So we have creating a healthy place, reducing desire, being more satisfied, abandoning the unnecessary activities, having a good ethics, a good conduct in our everyday life, where we have controlling our senses, eating in a healthy way, sleeping well, having awareness and vigilance in our everyday life, and reducing inner dialogue.
Già questo è un grande progetto di vita.
Already this is a huge life project. And the interesting thing is that the meditative practice and the preliminary help us in this. But when we are not doing the practice of meditation, because between one session and the other, how much time does it pass?
Un paio d'ore.
A few hours. Depends. If one is doing a retreat, usually it's a couple of hours. But in our daily life, maybe one day or weeks. Depends. So, if we want to meditate with some seriousness, and we say that we do this 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening at least, during the day, the way in which we live our day needs to be coherent with that meditative state that we want to achieve. One needs to sustain the other. And this means not creating this division between spiritual practice, family life, work. It's all in one. Our life is, every aspect of life is part of the same process of inner transformation and training. Yesterday we talked about this, that we are constantly transforming, and we need to use these different aspects of life. Of course, we cannot do everything right away, but we need to do what's possible in order to direct ourselves towards the same objective. And some may say, but Lama, with the job that I have, if you see between the windows here in the temple, there are some paintings that are called the 84 Mahasiddhas. We have between these two windows, we have the main image with Nagarjuna and Darikapa, and on the other side we have Lama Tsongkhapa and Atisha. And the tiger is a form of Lama Tsongkhapa and then Atisha, and around it there are the 84 Mahasiddhas. The 84 Mahasiddhas are historical figures of Buddhism before it arrived to Tibet that were able to obtain these realizations, siddhis, this state of peace, of balance, of joy. They were able to get out of their cycle of suffering, and each one of them following a different lifestyle. For instance, there were who were working at the bar, serving, or who was cleaning rice, or the minister, or
quello che faceva, ognuno con una funzione diversa, e la cosa bella è che fa vedere come
the fisherman, each one of them doing a different job, and the point is showing how keeping what they did in their normal daily life, but living it internally in a different way. So this shows how we can develop spiritually by doing what we do. There's the story of, on the right side of the window, there is the representation of Darikapa. Darikapa is recognized as one of the previous reincarnations of Lama Ganchen, and Darikapa was a king, and at a certain point, making a long story short, he encounters a master called Luipa that was amongst these 84 Mahasiddhas, and he found this person that saw him as a balanced and joyous, luminous person that did not possess anything but was feeling well. And he said, "Can you please teach me the secret?" And there was this king with his ministers saying, "Please help us because we have everything, but we are not really happy. Can you please teach us? What can we do?" And he said, "Yes, I can teach you, but it's pricey." And the king says, "Yeah, but I'm rich. How much money do you want?" And he said, "Look, you could also give me everything you have, but it would never be enough." And he said, "Okay, I give you the palace." "No, it's not enough." "I give you power. I will make you king." "It's not enough." At a certain point, he asked, "Okay, what can we offer in order to receive these teachings?" And he said, "Your life." And they accept. They leave the palace. The king stops being king. The minister stops being a minister. They become beggars. They go around India asking for food. Basically, the fishermen were throwing away the inner parts of the fish, and they were eating that. So they were also living amongst cemeteries. And this master started to teach them the practices of meditation. And when they reached a good level of stability and knowledge, one day they arrived in a place where there was a house of prostitutes, and the master went there, spoke to the boss, the responsible for this place, and said, "Look, I have a servant for you. I sell him to you, 300." And he sold the previous king, as a slave for 13 years. Actually, there was not a timing set, so he stayed there 12 years, but there was no time set. So the money that the master received, he gave to the poor people. And then he went to the king and said, "Okay, now you need to be there, you need to serve these people." And the king had this job of cleaning the feet of the guests that arrived. And it was not easy, of course, to do for his pride. And the master said, "During the night you meditate, and during the day you work." Then he continues with the minister and arrives to a pub where there was a lot of alcohol and meat. And there was the minister, which was a Brahmin. And Brahmins usually have this pride of being of the highest caste. And he said, "Okay, now I will sell you to this pub," as he did for the king, saying, "You will learn something for your pride." He said to the minister, "You feel yourself as being pure, so now you will do things that for you are the worst things, so serving people that are consuming alcohol and meat." And they both stayed in their respective places for 12 years. And their main job was, during the night, meditate, and during the day, acting in the most excellent way, doing their job, transforming the way in which they worked in their spiritual practice. So, being able to do the job in a way that was inseparable from the path itself. So, developing respect in the Heruka practice, so doing the visualizations, etc. The minister, for example, not only had to serve alcohol and meat, but he also had to clean the rice, so staying there hours doing this job. And they were able in this path to obtain the highest realizations. Then, during the same period, there were different situations that they realized at a certain point that they forgot to give food to Darikapa, the king, the previous king. And Darikapa is also named like this because the lady of the prostitute house was called Darima. So Darikapa means of possession of Darima. So this day where they did not give him food, Daripa arrived and saw him meditating with a lot of light around him, and she was shocked seeing this being, so supreme being, saying, "Oh wow, you're not just a normal being." And there were some kings that arrived to this house to have some fun. They went there and they saw Darikapa and said, "Please teach me." But Darikapa went away from this and they went to find the minister. So they reunited and they spent many years in Odiana in order to teach and practice. And we still have the practices called Doha that were written by them. So this is an example of how the spiritual practice does not depend on where you are or what you do, but it depends on how you live it. In their case, it's not only reciting the mantras and doing the meditation, but is overcoming your pride. You have to understand you're not the title you have or the caste that you were born into. You need to overcome this, go beyond it. And all of this to say that each and every one of us have our own life. Everyone have a different job, have a different context of life, and one doesn't have to necessarily change their job or context or family life in order to practice a spiritual and deep path. But what we need to do is to unite these things, unify them. So I want to learn meditation, not only meditating, I also have to bring awareness in what I do. I'm working at a restaurant, okay, I will serve with awareness. I see the other, I am kind. Just to make an example, but we could do thousands. So it's the way in which I do what I do. It's not what I'm doing. Because I can spend a lifetime in monastery and evolve spiritually zero if I don't do with a certain attitude and awareness. So Lama Ganchen really cared about this image to remind us that our spiritual path is not based on where we are and what we do, but how we do it. So here, having a healthier relationship with food, with sleep, being more aware in what we consume with our senses, having more awareness and presence with what we do, are for things that if we do them in our life, we will have a lot of benefit from it. With this, we conclude the initial conditions for meditation. And how you can see, as we said yesterday, there's a difference between wanting to meditate as a tourist and wanting to meditate. If we want to do something with some level of seriousness, which is what I hope, then it's not enough to learn to meditate. We also need to change our lifestyle that are coherent with this meditative state that we want to develop. And the positive thing is that these are changes that will bring benefit not only to us, but to also who is around us. And some may say, yeah, but Lama, it's difficult. Yeah. But the opposite is also difficult, if not worse. In Tibetan we say,
ti alzi sbatti la testa, se ti abbassi sbatti il sedere.
If you stand up, you will bump your head. If you sit down, you will bump your glutes. The point is, there is no situation where there's no need of putting effort. But the question is, how will I put effort in order to have some benefit from it? Because in life we have difficulties and we will have things that will require efforts, but there are some that are good for us and some that are not.
È meno faticoso mantenere vari stimoli sensoriali, eccetera, eccetera.
It's a struggle to keep less sensorial inputs, let's say.
Ma se noi pensiamo alla quantità di energia che consuma,
But if we think of the quantity of energy, it's more the energy that we need to consume this habit rather than the one we need to go against this habit. Eating badly consumes some energy, but the energy to eat well is less than the one that is needed to eat something that is unhealthy for us. So it seems as it's difficult, but actually it's much worse the opposite. The lack of presence, the lack of awareness is much more difficult rather than the one to create some awareness and presence. So now, let's go back to something practical before ending this session. When we go back to the preliminaries of meditations, we saw the posture, and within it we saw the part of the breathing. So the breathing techniques and the meditation on breathing we needed, especially when we have a lot of inner dialogue. When the mind has a lot of thoughts, etc., at this point, doing these breathing exercises have this function of calming these inner thoughts. And there are many different techniques in this, and I wanted to share these techniques, not all of them, but some of them, so that you can try and see which one works best for you. Because it's not necessarily that the same breathing technique is the best for everyone. One of the techniques that are most used is similar to the one of counting sheep, like we do in order to sleep sometimes. Why? Because the mind is occupied counting sheep, and so it doesn't have to think of anything else. So it's easier to fall asleep. So the first exercise, we did it yesterday. So after sitting down in the correct position, let's remind ourselves that the correct position is also about breathing in 4 phases. So inhaling, keeping, exhaling, keeping on an abdomen level. Once we did this, we start counting our breathing. And here we have the way for beginners and the advanced technique. The first is I breathe in, breathe out, and this is 1. Then I inhale and exhale, and this counts 2. And ideally we arrive at 7. If we see that I arrived at 7, our mind is calm, then we can proceed with the next part of the meditation. If not, we continue counting, ideally until 21. If at a certain point we start losing count and we forget, then we have to go back to 1. Because the objective is not arriving at 21. The objective is calming the mind. And if someone needs to arrive to 108, you can arrive at 108. It's an exercise that really works well because the fact of breathing and counting it already helps a lot to calm down. So in the beginner level or middle way, it's this. So inhale, exhale 1, and I go back to count 0 if I lose track of the count. The advanced level is I inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, and so on. So the same thing, but if while I'm inhaling and exhaling, and if in between 1 and 2 my mind went somewhere else that was not my breath, I go back to count 0. But if we do this in the beginning, one will just simply stay at 1. So it's very normal. We will also see it together. There are 9 steps in order to reach this level of samadhi, so level of meditative concentration, and the first level is the level in which the mind is not able to stay still. It means that you're starting, you're beginning, so it's normal that in the beginning we sit down and for the majority of time the mind goes somewhere else. It's more the fight to keep the mind where it is rather than staying there. So in the beginning, if we try to breathe, counting inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, and every time the mind distracts itself, goes back to count 0, we will never arrive to 0. And we will also get frustrated. But once we have more experience, we can start doing this. So I keep my mind on the breathing. When I see that the mind goes somewhere else, I start back again from 1. And if we're able to arrive at 5, it's already a wonderful result. And the path is that in the beginning is more the time that we are not thinking of the breathing, rather the time that we spend on the breathing with our attention. Then, after a while, it becomes the opposite, until we arrive at staying just in the breathing. But we will see this later on, which is the part of the object of meditation that can be the breathing or something else. So this technique is I inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, and we count. If we sit down and we see that there are some strong emotions of fear, jealousy, anger, or things like this, we can inhale light, exhale black smoke. And when we inhale, we imagine that we are collecting this tension, and exhaling, we are throwing away that tension in the form of black smoke. Yesterday we did this. So we recognize where we have some tensions in our body, in our mind. We inhale, we collect these tensions, and we can also imagine this light entering. And when we exhale, we eliminate this tension in the form of black smoke dissolving in space. And we do this for the time necessary until we have a more calm mind. And with this, we have 2 of the most common exercises for the breathing. Then we have another that I really like very much, where I give a rhythm to my breathing, and so I give some rhythm to the duration of inhaling, of keeping, exhaling, and keeping the air. When we start with durations that are very small, and then slowly we can make it of a longer duration. So usually we inhale counting to 4, then we keep the air. In the beginning we can keep 2 or 4, it depends for each and every one of us. As we said yesterday, when we do these techniques of breathing, it's important not to force it. It's like we are accompanying someone, giving them direction. Look, come here, not forcing the person in the direction. So I direct myself with kindness, counting for the inhale with 4. But if I'm not able, I can stay at 3 or 2 or 1. It's not a problem. Ideally, where we want to arrive is inhaling with 4, keeping the air with 8, exhaling with 8, and keeping the air 4. This is ideally where we want to arrive to. It's like
forma una sorta di un rombo dove la parte sotto
it's like a diamond. So I inhale 4, keep the air 8, exhale 4, and keep the air 8. Sorry, 4. And when we are able to stay in this, when this becomes more natural without forcing it, we can slowly and gradually increase it. So inhaling 5, keeping 10, exhaling 10, and keeping 5. Ideally, already doing 4, 8, 8, 4 is great, is excellent. But we can arrive, if one does it seriously, without much effort, we can arrive at 8, 16, 16, 8, for example. When we go beyond the count of 4, this already helps a lot, calming the mind. So another exercise is this. So I give a rhythm to my breathing, inhaling with 4, keeping with 8, exhaling with 8, and keeping with 4, this in the beginning, and then slowly, we can do it with a longer time, but we don't have to force it. If what is comfortable is inhaling 4 and keeping with 2, I will stay for a long time with this rhythm. If after a while I am able to keep the air a bit more without forcing it, then I can gradually do it with 3 or 4 counts. So this is another technique of breathing that really helps a lot to calm the mind. This technique in particular, it's called the diamond breathing. And I was reading that in the secret services in the United States, one of the techniques that they teach to secret service agents to overcome moments of high tension and fear is exactly this technique of breathing. The terminology they use is, they call it to eliminate the mind trash, which is when you're in a moment of fear and danger, you need to have mental clarity. You cannot stay there rethinking the past, projecting the future. We need to pacify all of this in order to have clarity, to know what to do in the moment. And they do this with inhaling 4, keeping 4, exhaling 4, and keeping 4. So this is the rhythm that they give through themselves. 4, 4, 4, 4. And with this, the mind calms down. If we are able to go a bit further, inhaling with 4, keeping with 8, exhaling with 8, and keeping with 4 is even better. In my experience, this works really well. And sometimes we can add up the techniques. For instance, I start relaxing the body and mind, collecting the tensions and releasing the tensions. Then I start counting the breathing, and then I start giving rhythm to the breathing.
Okay. Ripeto quello che abbiamo detto ieri.
So what we said yesterday is these are not techniques of meditation. These are techniques of preparation to the meditation. And already by themselves are wonderful, and they work extremely well. And the important thing is, if I create the right conditions, the preparation to the meditation comes better. And if I do well the preparation to meditation, then the meditation will come easily. If I try to meditate without creating the conditions and without creating the preparation, then it becomes more difficult. So sometimes I see people saying, to meditate is too difficult, it will be impossible for me. But did you create the conditions? Did you do the preparations? No. So then you will never make it. So for this reason, I think in the beginning, the emphasis needs to be put on the preparation for meditation, which is already a lot. And when we create familiarity with this, then it comes natural choosing a place where to let the mind rest. I'm there, I inhale, exhale, I calm down the mind, I stay there a while, and then I choose where to put my mind. And so there, I can choose an object of meditation. And in the afternoon, we will speak more about this, where the meditation, the real meditation starts. But if meditating, one last thing is, if when we're doing the preliminary of meditation and meditation, the state of concentration cannot be a place where one is on a defensive mode. So what I mean with this is, I need to meditate. Okay, I cannot have other thoughts. No, don't come. No, this, no. It's like we have this tension trying to avoid our other thoughts. This doesn't work.
Lo stato di concentrazione.
The state of concentration is not a state of tension. A concentration state is a state where the mind is relaxed and relaxes from the distractions and relaxes within an object that is chosen. When we take, for instance, a good book, I think it already happened to you, reading a wonderful book, and then at a certain point, one doesn't even perceive anymore the pages because we entered in the book and we don't even feel the time passing by. It's like we're entering in this flow, in this process. And one relaxes from distractions by entering in this, and the meditation has this same objective, where it's not about the fact that I need to protect from other thoughts or block other thoughts. I bring the mind to relax in an object and being able to stay there without needing to protect from other distractions. If we try to meditate with this attitude of needing to protect ourselves from other thoughts, this creates an inner tension that doesn't work. But it's a state of relaxation in which I relax from distractions and I relax the mind into something that I want. One thing that we will see further on is we have different enemies of meditation called the 4 defects and the 8 antidotes. And amongst these, it's the part about the regrets. So who has regrets and will try to meditate, this person will not be able to do it, and we won't even know why. So this is why in the preliminaries it's important to do the purification practices in order to be in peace with our own past and with ourselves. Because if I'm there with this tension and this sensation of feeling guilty or regret, we're not able to relax with ourselves. And one of the things that happens when someone goes to meditate is that we are left alone with ourselves. Like once a master said, if you're alone and you're not feeling well, it means you're not in good company. So it's not a very nice thing. And sometimes we have these profound regrets or sensations of feeling guilty that doesn't allow us to stay with ourselves. And these things need to be solved, accepted, pacified in order to meditate well. And also, of course, the meditative process also helps in this, but in the techniques of preparation for meditation, Tsongkhapa puts a lot of emphasis on the practice of Vajrasattva that has this function of pacifying the relationship with ourselves, with our past. And we can do a bit of this today. And the practice of requesting blessings to generate this energy with the intent of meditating. So it's like something that you build one part after the other, and if we put all the correct things together, then we have the correct state of concentration. But we're not able to arrive to this without putting all the pieces together. So one of the things I want to do in these days is to help at least to have an idea of which are these pieces. Today we saw some of these pieces, then we will see others, but then it starts slowly to take some shape. So let's remind ourselves The external conditions are fundamental, included what we eat, how we sleep, the information that we receive, the mental presence we have in what we do, the vigilance that looks at what we're doing, reducing inner dialogue, and all the rest. So I invite you, now we will stop for lunch, try to eat with awareness, which means I'm eating. I know that it's against, let's say, this culture, but let's not talk about what is not necessary. One of the most beautiful things is to eat in silence, being able to eat and just be there, or walking and being there. So trying to bring back to presence in what we do. Let's dedicate now, and then we will start at 3:30.
Drove munsel takto ne gyorchi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshi ninsen takto delekpe koncho sumki chingelo ngodrobotsol koncho sumki trashisho.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Buon appetito e riprendiamo alle 3:30.